"You want to spend the night before our wedding with your ex?" That's what she asked him. Calm, sharp, not begging. And when he nodded, thinking love meant permission, she didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just whispered, "Then go." Have you ever watched someone choose confusion over commitment? Have you ever loved someone so deeply, only to realize they wanted clarity from the past more than certainty with you? That's the story you're about to hear. A story about power, about choice, about a woman who had everything, until the man she trusted the most decided to test the one thing they built their future on: loyalty. Ayanna Brooks was about to become the wife of Kellen Royce, billionaire tech mogul, America's most eligible CEO, and the kind of man who turned heads and closed deals without blinking. To the world, they were perfect. To Ayanna, they were real. But the night before her wedding, she found herself face to face with the one question no bride should ever be asked. Can I have your blessing to spend one night with my ex? No, this isn't fiction. It's life when people confuse closure with connection. He thought she would say yes. He thought she'd wait. But what she did instead shocked him, the world, and every guest at their rooftop ceremony. This isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of reclaiming your worth, of walking away with your dignity, not your dress, of becoming the woman people don't just remember, they respect. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll understand something most people learn too late. Love doesn't beg, it honors. Ayanna Brooks stood barefoot in the center of the suite, wrapped in a silk robe that whispered against her skin. Her fingers trembled slightly as she placed a final pin in her hair. Tomorrow she would walk down the aisle and marry Kellen Royce, the man the world envied and the man she loved without reservation. The city lights of Atlanta glowed behind her, reflecting off the full-length windows. It was quiet in the penthouse, calm, peaceful, but something in her chest fluttered, an unease she couldn't name. She dismissed it as nerves. Who wouldn't be nervous the night before marrying one of the most powerful tech CEOs in the country? On the bed behind her lay her wedding dress, hand-beaded, ivory, timeless. Her mother's pearls rested beside it in a velvet case. Her vows were folded neatly on the nightstand. She had rewritten them 3 times over the past week, wanting every word to be perfect, just like Kellen had made their relationship feel. He had given her a life she never dreamed she'd have. Trips to Santorini, helicopter rides over Manhattan, a brownstone with her name on the deed. But beyond the gifts, it was his attention, his consistency, and his promise to be her safe space that meant the most. That's why the knock on the door didn't feel normal. It wasn't her stylist, or her best friend Quinn, who had gone down to the lobby to handle a last-minute seating chart change. This knock was slower, heavier. She turned, heart thudding, and opened the door. Kellen stood there, shirt sleeves rolled, no tie, hair slightly mussed, hands in his pockets, and eyes that refused to meet hers. Her stomach dropped. "Kellen?" Her voice was soft, unsure. "Hey," he said, stepping inside. He didn't kiss her, didn't smile. He looked guilty. She closed the door behind him. "What's going on?" He paced toward the window, paused, then turned to face her. "I need to talk to you," he said carefully, "and I need you to really hear me before reacting." Every alarm in Ayanna's soul went off. Still, she nodded. "Okay." He looked down at his hands, then back up. "Brielle called me." Ayanna's lips parted slightly. She hadn't heard that name in almost a year. Kellen's ex, the woman he'd once claimed nearly ruined his life. The one who vanished from headlines after he ended things for good. Ayanna kept her face neutral. "Your ex?" She reached out a few days ago. I ignored her at first. Then she called again this morning, said she was in town, that she needed closure, that she's been in therapy, that she just wants to talk. He was talking too fast, too rehearsed. "Kellen." She asked for one night, not a night together like that, not physical, just one night to sit with me, in the same room, one last conversation to let go. Her throat went dry. "And you're telling me this because—" "I want your blessing," he said. Silence, complete suffocating silence. Ayana stared at him, blinking slowly, trying to keep the shock from shaking her voice. You want to spend the night before our wedding with your ex? It's not what it sounds like. Oh? She crossed her arms, calm masking the ache building in her chest. Then explain it to me. He stepped forward. We shared years together, Ayana. She wasn't always toxic. We had moments, real ones. I can't just ignore someone I once loved when they say they're hurting. And what am I to you? She asked, her voice low. His mouth opened, but she held up a hand. Don't answer that, she said sharply. Not yet. She turned, walked over to the nightstand, and picked up her phone. Her fingers moved swiftly across the screen. Quinn, I need a prenup draft. Now. Kellen froze. What are you doing? Preparing, she said, placing the phone back down. You made a decision, Kellen. I'm making one too. He walked toward her, hands out. Ayana, I love you. I swear to God I do. But this is about making peace with the past. No, it's about reopening a door that should have stayed locked. She says she won't even touch me. Ayana laughed softly, bitterly. You shouldn't have to tell me that like it's a favor. He stepped back like her words stung. Maybe they did. She looked him in the eye. You think this is fair? The night before our vows. I didn't expect her to call. I didn't expect to care. But when I heard her voice... You chose to answer it, Ayana cut in. You chose to let her in. She walked to the window now, letting the city lights fill her vision. I've never begged for love, she said. Never asked someone to pick me. I'm not asking to leave you. You already did. Kellen's shoulders sank. I don't want to lose you over this. She turned slowly. You already lost me the second you needed to ask permission to dishonor us. Her voice didn't shake, but her heart did. Still, she wasn't going to cry for someone who made her feel like a placeholder. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Then go, she said. Kellen blinked. You mean it? I'm not your mother. I won't stop you from doing what you feel you need to do. But understand something, Kellen. If you walk out that door to spend the night with your past, don't walk back in expecting me to be your future. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Ayana walked to the bathroom and closed the door. She didn't slam it. She didn't scream. She simply turned on the faucet, washed her face, and looked herself in the mirror. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She breathed. Ayana stayed in the bathroom long after the water had stopped running. She needed silence, stillness, a moment to process what had just happened. The robe clung to her like second skin, but she felt exposed, not physically but emotionally, wide open and stripped of the future she thought was secure. She had imagined that night differently. She thought she'd fall asleep dreaming of flowers and vows. Instead, she was mourning a love that had unraveled with 5 words. I want your blessing first. By the time she stepped out, the suite was empty. Kellen was gone. The air still carried his scent, but it meant nothing now. Scents fade. So do illusions. Ayana sat on the edge of the bed, glancing at the wedding dress draped carefully over the velvet ottoman. She reached for her journal, the one she hadn't touched in weeks, and opened to a fresh page. Love is not a maybe. It's not something you negotiate the night before forever. She paused, then underlined it twice. Her phone buzzed. Quinn, are you okay? What happened? You disappeared from the group chat. Ayana took a long breath before replying. Ayana, he asked to spend the night with his ex. He begged. I let him go. Quinn, you're kidding, right? Tell me this is one of those twisted groom prank shows. Ayana didn't respond. She didn't have the energy to explain the expression in Kellen's eyes. The pleading, the way he thought this was somehow honest or brave. It was neither. It was betrayal dressed up as closure. She closed the journal, stood up, and walked over to the closet. She stared at the row of coordinated outfits she'd picked for their honeymoon. The sandals, the swimwear, the intimate pieces only he was supposed to see. She pulled one set out, stared at it, then placed it in a bag. Not to take with her, to get rid of. The rest of the night passed in pieces. She didn't cry. Instead, she drafted a statement to the wedding coordinator, then another, to Quinn, instructing her not to cancel anything yet, just delay. She wasn't ready to tell the world. Not yet, but she was ready to tell herself, you deserve more than a man who hesitates on the eve of choosing you. Kellen Royce sat across from Brielle in a dimly lit restaurant suite. He hadn't intended to meet her here. It was supposed to be a short talk, closure. But she had insisted on somewhere private, intimate, somewhere she could say goodbye properly. He thought she would cry, apologize, say what she needed to say, and leave. Instead, she smiled like she'd already won. You look tired, she said, sipping her wine. Wedding stress? Kellen didn't answer. He wasn't sure what to say anymore. I didn't think you'd come, Brielle added. But I'm glad you did. I missed your face. I'm not here to relive anything, he said sharply. Just to close the book. Brielle laughed. You always did love metaphors. Silence stretched between them. After a moment, she stood and walked over to his side of the table, her heels clicking slowly against the hardwood floor. You don't have to lie, she whispered, placing her hand lightly on his shoulder. If she trusted you completely, she wouldn't be worried about a simple conversation. Kellen stood up. I should go, but Brielle blocked his way. I'm not the villain, Kellen, she said. You came because a part of you isn't done. A part of you still wonders if you made the right choice. He looked down at her hand on his chest. And for a second, a dangerous silent second, he didn't move. Not because he wanted her, but because he knew Ayanna wouldn't have hesitated to walk away from someone who did. That was the difference. Ayanna opened her laptop and opened the prenup template Quinn had sent. Years ago, back when she and Kellen first started talking long-term, they had laughed about it then, calling it extra cautious. Now she wasn't laughing. She adjusted the language, protected her brand, protected herself. By 3:17 a.m., her eyes were heavy, but her spine was straighter than ever. She wasn't the broken one in this story. The sun rose like nothing had happened. The city buzzed. Birds flew. Room service knocked. Ayanna didn't open the door. She sat in silence, reading over the vows she had once poured her heart into. They felt distant now, not because she didn't believe in love, but because she no longer believed in his. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Kellen. Kellen, can we talk? Please. I left. Nothing happened. I just need to explain. She stared at the message, then turned off her phone. There was nothing left to explain. You sure you want to go through with this? Her friend asked, concern layered under her usually fierce voice. Ayanna stared out the window. I don't want a wedding to prove I'm worth choosing, she said quietly. I want peace. I want to be respected. I want to be loved without needing to make room for someone's confusion. She folded the dress back into the garment bag. Then she reached for the envelope she'd already sealed. Her final message to Kellen. One sentence. You got your night. I'll take the rest of my life. Would you still show up at the altar after a request like that? Or would you walk away too? Let us know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to support more bold, unforgettable stories like this one. The night had a strange stillness about it, the kind that made even footsteps feel louder than they were. Kellen Royce stepped out of his chauffeured car in front of the boutique hotel Brielle had chosen. It wasn't a public place with familiar faces, nor was it one of those luxury chains the paparazzi lingered near. It was quiet, private, discreet, the kind of place where secrets felt safe. As he stood under the canopy of soft golden lights and looked up at the building, something inside him twisted. It wasn't guilt, not fully, not yet. It was a mix of discomfort and doubt, like his heart knew what his pride didn't want to admit. He had no business being here. But he walked inside anyway. The elevator ride to the suite was slow, too slow. He checked his phone once. No messages. Ayanna hadn't called. She hadn't texted. That alone should have made him turn around. But instead, he pushed forward, convincing himself it was still about closure, that he wasn't doing anything wrong, that it was just words between two people who once knew each other well. When the elevator dinged, the door opened to the top floor where Brielle was waiting. She had changed into a deep burgundy dress that clung to her curves and made no attempt to hide its intention. Her blonde hair was pulled back in loose waves, her makeup subtle but flawless. She looked exactly like she had the night they met, polished, dangerous, magnetic. "Kellen," she said smoothly. "You came—" He stepped out, nodding. "You said you needed to talk." "I do." Her voice was soft, almost too soft. "Come in." The suite was dimly lit with candles, wine glasses already poured. The air smelled faintly of jasmine. Every detail felt deliberate. He hesitated at the doorway, but finally stepped in. The door clicked closed behind him. Brielle gestured to the sofa. "Sit with me?" "I'd rather stand," he replied. His tone was polite, but distant. She didn't push. She sank into the couch with a sigh and picked up her glass of wine. "It's strange, isn't it?" she said. "How close we came to forever. How far apart we ended up." "We ended it for a reason," he said flatly. Brielle's eyes flicked up to his. "Did you ever really end it in your heart, though? Or did you just bury it?" Kellen didn't respond. He wasn't here for games. She took a slow sip, watching him over the rim of her glass. "You used to love how direct I was," she said. "You used to say I was the only one who saw through the noise. That was before the manipulation. Before you started seeing love as a game of leverage." Her lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You say manipulation. I say strategy. But let's not argue. I didn't invite you here to fight." "Then why am I here, Brielle?" She set the glass down and stood, walking toward him. "Because you needed to see me. Even if you don't admit it, you needed to look me in the eye and decide, was Ayana your safety or your truth?" Kellen's jaw clenched. "I'm marrying Ayana. Tomorrow." "Not tonight, you're not," she replied quickly. "I told her where I was going. I told her the truth." Brielle's brows lifted. "And she let you come?" He looked away. "I see," Brielle murmured. "So she didn't stop you. That must mean something." "It means I broke her trust," he admitted. "And now I'm trying not to make it worse." "But you already have." Her voice was gentle, but her words weren't. She stepped closer. Too close. "I remember when you used to reach for me without thinking," she whispered. He stepped back. "I'm not that man anymore." "Then why are you here, Kellen?" He paused. For the first time that night, he had no clear answer. All he could think of was the look in Ayana's eyes when she said, "If you walk out that door, don't come back expecting me to be here." He should have stayed, should have held her, not chased ghosts. "I made a mistake," he said aloud, more to himself than to Brielle. She reached out to touch his arm, but he gently moved her hand away. "This was wrong," he said. "You don't need closure. You need someone to validate your pain, and I'm not that man anymore." "So you're leaving?" she asked. "Yes." Brielle stepped back, her expression unreadable. "You think Ayana will forgive you for this? I didn't sleep with you. You didn't have to." The silence between them was sharp. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said quietly before walking toward the door. Brielle didn't stop him this time. As he walked down the hall, each step felt heavier than the last. The further he got from her suite, the clearer his thoughts became. But the clarity came too late. The damage had already been done. He hadn't physically betrayed Ayana, but emotionally, he had abandoned her at a moment that demanded reassurance, not doubt. When he reached the hotel lobby, he called his driver and sat in the back seat. With his head resting against the window, watching the city blur by, he checked his phone again. Still nothing from Ayana. His thumb hovered over the screen, debating whether to call. He typed a message. "I left. I'm sorry. Nothing happened." He deleted it, then typed again. "I made a mistake. I want to come home." Deleted again. There were no words to clean up what he had chosen, only time. And time wasn't something he was sure Ayana would give him. By the time he arrived at their penthouse, the lights were out. He used his key and stepped inside quietly, hoping she might be asleep, hoping he could at least talk to her before morning. But the bedroom was empty. So was the closet. Her wedding dress was gone. Her bags were gone. Only a folded piece of paper sat on the pillow. He walked to it slowly, already dreading what it might say. In her handwriting, one line stared back at him. "You got your night. I'll take the rest of my life." He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, heart sinking in a way that no amount of success, status, or apologies could lift. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't made a scene. She simply left with her dignity and a line he'd never forget. And for the first time in his adult life, Kellen Royce realized what real loss felt like. Not losing a deal, not losing a client, but losing a woman who had every reason to stay, and chose herself instead. Kellen sat in the dark of the penthouse for hours, the letter still in his hand. The silence was suffocating. No hum of Ayana's music in the background, no sound of her heels clicking across the hardwood floors, no soft laughter from the other room while she spoke with Quinn or her mother. The place that once felt alive now resembled a cold, empty shell. He replayed every moment from the day before. From the second he decided to take Brielle's call, to the slow way he rationalized her request. And the worst part, how he truly believed Ayana would forgive him once he explained himself. He had mistaken her grace for weakness. He now saw the difference. By sunrise, he hadn't slept. He hadn't even moved from the edge of the bed. His phone was still quiet. He didn't blame her. He didn't even know if he deserved to hear from her again. When the door finally creaked open hours later, he stood up quickly, hope rushing in without permission. But it wasn't Ayana. It was Quinn, dressed in black jeans, a simple tee, no makeup, hair pulled into a bun. Her expression was unreadable, but her body language screamed one thing. She wasn't here for small talk. "You look like hell," she said, closing the door behind her. "I thought you might be Ayana," Kellen replied. Quinn raised a brow. "That's bold. After what you did." "I didn't cheat," he said quickly. "You left. On the one night that mattered. You didn't have to cheat. You just had to show her she wasn't enough." He sat back down, silent. Quinn walked past him and picked up the note Ayana had left. She didn't read it. She already knew what it said. She placed it back on the pillow, then turned to face him. "She's not coming to the wedding," she said bluntly. "I already contacted the vendors, told them everything's cancelled. Does she want to talk?" "She doesn't owe you anything, Kellen. Not after that." His hands clenched into fists. "I made a mistake," he said, voice low. "But I didn't sleep with Brielle. I went because I thought it would give me peace, closure. I thought I could walk away from my past clean. And in doing that," Quinn said, "you burned the bridge to your future." He looked up at her, defeated. "Where is she?" "Somewhere you don't get to be right now." He didn't argue. What could he say? Quinn walked to the window and stared out. "You know, Ayana gave you her whole heart. She believed in you when she had every reason to doubt you. You were her safe space, and in one night, you turned that into a question mark. I thought love could survive one mistake." Quinn turned slowly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A choice is looking your bride in the eye and asking if you can spend the night with another woman. You chose ego. She chose self-worth." He had no response, only regret. "She asked me to bring her things," Quinn said, gesturing toward the closet. "You can keep everything else. She doesn't want the ring, doesn't want the keys. She's done." Kellen felt like something inside him cracked open. The realization wasn't just settling in, it was crashing down. This wasn't just a pause. This wasn't temporary space. This was the end. "Tell her," he began, but the words died in his throat. Quinn shook her head. "No messages, no apologies, no bargaining. She's reclaiming her power. Let her." She walked toward the door, then paused. "You were a chapter in her story. You could have been the forever. But forever doesn't hesitate." With that, she left. Kellen sank back into the chair. The ring he had spent months designing sat in a velvet box on the nightstand. He opened it slowly, staring at the pear-shaped diamond surrounded by smaller stones, each representing a place they had traveled together. The inside of the band was engraved with 4 words, "You are my home." The irony wasn't lost on him. Ayana wasn't coming back to that home. She was building her own now, without him. Ayana sat in the passenger seat of Quinn's car, the city behind them growing smaller in the rearview mirror. Her sunglasses shielded her eyes, but not her thoughts. Her suitcase rested in the trunk. Her dress was folded away. Her phone was on silent, tucked into her purse. She hadn't cried, not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain had evolved into something stronger, clarity. "I'm proud of you," Quinn said, breaking the silence. Ayana looked out the window. "I didn't think I'd be capable of walking away from someone I loved." "You didn't walk away from love. You walked away from disrespect." Ayana nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "You know what's wild? I thought I needed to prove myself, that I had to be perfect, that if I did everything right, he'd never question us." "You were already enough," Quinn said gently. "He's the one who needed fixing, not you." Ayana pulled out her journal and flipped to the page from last night. She added a new line beneath her last entry. "You can't build forever with someone who still entertains what was." As the car merged onto the highway, Ayana closed the journal. She didn't know where she'd go yet. Maybe a quiet cabin outside the city, maybe a weekend by the coast. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't running away. She was running toward herself, toward the woman who refused to be anyone's second option. And somewhere deep in her heart, she whispered a promise she intended to keep. "I won't be guilted into silence. I won't be begged into submission. I won't shrink myself to be loved." The ring that once sparkled with hope now sat in a jewelry box in the back seat, stripped of its meaning. Kellen made a choice. Now, so had she. And her choice would echo louder than his apology ever could. Because when a woman walks away with her self-respect, the silence she leaves behind is deafening. The rooftop was a vision of perfection, golden chairs aligned in meticulous symmetry. A string quartet played soft classical notes, blending with the hum of Atlanta's skyline. Guests sipped champagne and took selfies in front of the floral arch, unaware that behind the beauty, something had already shattered. The sun had just begun to dip, casting long shadows across the rooftop garden where Kellen Royce was supposed to marry Ayana Brooks. Except Ayana hadn't shown up. And it had been 21 minutes since the wedding was supposed to begin. Kellen stood at the altar in a custom black tuxedo, hand in pocket. Eyes locked on the elevator that hadn't opened since he arrived. He kept glancing down at his watch. 5:37 p.m. They were supposed to say "I do" at 5 sharp. Whispers had started spreading among the guests. "She's probably fixing her veil. She's a bride. It's fashionably late. She's making an entrance." That's what women do. Kellen knew better. Ayana wasn't the type to be late. She respected time, commitment, details. Every part of this wedding had been planned with precision, from the live jazz ensemble for cocktail hour to the handwritten vow, books that Ayana insisted on using instead of reading from phones. This wasn't a delay. This was a message, and it was getting louder by the minute. His best man, Elijah, leaned over and whispered, "You good?" Kellen nodded, though his stomach was tightening by the second. "I'm sure she's on her way," Elijah said. "Cold feet happen. Just give it a minute." But Kellen wasn't thinking about cold feet. He was thinking about last night, about Brielle, about Ayana's last words before he left. "Then go. But don't come back expecting me to be here." He had come back, and she wasn't. Now he was standing in front of 200 guests under the string. Lights she picked, with no one walking down the aisle toward him. The event planner, Marcy, quietly approached the side of the altar, clutching a clipboard and wearing an expression that confirmed what he feared. "No sign of her," she murmured. "Her suite is empty. The stylist never arrived. The driver is still downstairs, but she never got in the car." Kellen's throat dried. "Has anyone heard from her?" "Not since early this morning," Marcy replied. "And her phone goes straight to voicemail." He nodded stiffly. The quartet played on, unaware. Guests were starting to shift in their seats. Some stood. Phones came out. Curious glances turned to worried ones. Across the garden, Quinn appeared from the private elevator. She walked with purpose, her heels tapping the concrete like punctuation marks. Kellen saw her and froze. In her hand was a small white envelope. She reached him at the altar and didn't hesitate. "She wanted you to have this." He took the envelope, heart pounding. It wasn't sealed, just folded once, neatly. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sentence, handwritten in Ayana's unmistakable script. "You got your night. I'll take the rest of my life. Ayana." He stared at the words for a long time. Not dramatic, not emotional, just final. He folded the note slowly and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Then he looked at Quinn. "Is she okay?" "She's better than okay," Quinn said. "She's free." The statement landed like a slap. Kellen's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Quinn turned to leave, but then paused. "For what it's worth," she said, her voice softer now, "Ayana loved you, deeply. She was willing to give you everything, but she wasn't willing to beg for your loyalty. She didn't wait for a response. She walked away, back through the guests, many of whom had caught on by now. Whispers turned into gasps. Cameras were lifted. Some tried to film, others stared. Elijah stepped in beside Kellen again, voice low. "You want to call it off officially?" Kellen didn't respond at first. He took a long breath, then nodded once. Elijah gave a subtle signal to Marcy, who moved into action with her staff to discreetly guide guests back to the lower floor for cocktails and updates. Kellen didn't move. He remained at the altar, staring out at the empty aisle where Ayana should have walked. The petals still lined the floor. The breeze still danced with a white fabric wrapped around the chairs. The sunset still painted the skyline in shades of rose and orange. Everything was perfect, except her, except him, except them. He pulled the folded note from his jacket again and read it one more time. "You got your night. I'll take the rest of my life." He closed his eyes and swallowed hard. He didn't realize a single sentence could sting more than a scream. When he opened his eyes again, the rooftop was almost cleared. Just staff packing up decorations, chairs being moved. Centerpieces collected. The wedding that was supposed to define their future had ended before it even began. And he couldn't stop thinking about the fact that he hadn't even tried to stop her. He'd watched her slip away the moment he accepted Brielle's call. He gave her up. Now he had to live with the silence that came after. The rooftop was almost empty now. Kellen stayed long after the guests had cleared, after the staff had stopped, making eye contact, after the music had faded into the night air. The city lights shimmered below, indifferent to the personal storm that had unraveled above them. He sat on one of the gold chairs meant for guests, elbows on his knees, staring at the now wilting petals on the aisle runner. The wind picked up slightly, blowing a few away. Everything felt symbolic. A ceremony meant to seal love had become a visual of what it looked like when love slipped away in silence. He didn't know how long he sat there. Long enough for the sky to darken. Long enough for his phone to die. Elijah eventually returned with a fresh phone charger and a bottle of water. He handed both to Kellen without a word, then sat down beside him. "She really gone?" Elijah asked after a moment. Kellen nodded. "Guess that explains the envelope." Another nod. Elijah leaned back in the chair. "You want the honest truth, man. Always. You messed up." Kellen didn't defend himself. He just listened. She was the one. Everybody saw that. You know how rare it is to find someone who can handle your world without trying to change it? Kellen kept his eyes on the ground. "And I get it," Elijah added. "The past pulls sometimes. You think there's something left in the ash, so you go poking around. But when you've got someone who's standing 10 toes down beside you, the past has no business being invited to your future. I didn't sleep with her. You don't have to sleep with someone to betray trust." "I thought I was being honest," Kellen said quietly. "I told Ayana everything. I didn't sneak around. I didn't lie." Elijah turned to him. "You were honest about the wrong thing. You should have been honest with yourself about why you needed that night in the first place. You weren't looking for closure. You were looking to feed a doubt that had no business being there. Kellen's jaw clenched. He knew Elijah was right. Everyone around him was, except maybe Brielle. But even she, in her own way, probably understood the game she played. I didn't think she'd walk, Kellen admitted. She's not the kind of woman who begs to stay, Elijah said. She's the kind that leaves once she knows you're not choosing her fully. Kellen rested his face in his hands. I thought I'd have a chance to explain, to apologize. You did have a chance, Elijah said. Last night. When she asked if you were really sure, Kellen remembered that moment clearly. Ayanna, calm and quiet, with her arms crossed and eyes searching his face. Not for lies, but for the truth he was too proud to face. Do you think she'll talk to me again? Kellen asked. Elijah exhaled. I don't know. Maybe. But if she does, it won't be as your fiancé. That cut deep, but it was fair. Eventually, the rooftop had to be cleared completely. Marcy returned, this time without her clipboard, and gently reminded them that the venue had another booking early the next morning. Kellen stood, adjusted his jacket, and took one final look around. The sunset was gone. The candles had burned out. The archway still stood, but without Ayanna, it meant nothing. He took the long walk back to the elevator in silence, the folded note, still pressed against his chest like a reminder of what he lost. Downstairs, the hotel lobby was filled with murmurs, and guests still wondering what had happened. His parents sat with Ayanna's aunt, whispering urgently. One of the cousins looked like they were on the verge of tears. Kellen kept walking, not ready to face the crowd, not ready to answer questions. He exited through a side door and got into the back of his car. The driver looked at him through the rearview mirror. Home, sir. Kellen hesitated. He didn't want to go back to the penthouse, not to the place where Ayanna's dress once hung, where their wedding night was supposed to be filled with joy and intimacy. He couldn't face that empty space. Not yet. Drive, he said. Just drive. The city moved around them, people walking hand in hand, laughter spilling from rooftop bars, couples leaning into each other at red lights. It all felt like a cruel joke. He remembered how Ayanna used to reach across to hold his hand during long rides. Sometimes, she didn't even say anything, just held it. That small gesture had meant more than any words. It was the kind of presence that made everything else fade away. And now, his hand was empty. He stared at his reflection in the dark window, barely recognizing the man looking back at him. A man with everything, wealth, success, power, and yet he had managed to lose the one thing that kept him grounded. Ayanna. Her name echoed in his head. She hadn't made a scene. She hadn't embarrassed him. She hadn't screamed or called off the wedding publicly. She had simply disappeared. Quiet, controlled, powerful, the way only a woman who knew her worth could. The car eventually stopped near a small overlook that faced the city skyline. Kellen got out and stood by the railing, staring out at the lights. Somewhere out there, she was starting over, maybe with Quinn, maybe alone, maybe planning her next move, but she was no longer planning it with him, and that reality hurt more than he expected. He thought she'd wait. He thought she'd forgive. He thought love would cover his indecision. But Ayanna wasn't a placeholder. She wasn't a backup plan. She was the kind of woman who made decisions once, who didn't reopen closed doors. She meant it when she said, "Don't come back expecting me to be here." And now, she wasn't. He pulled the folded note from his pocket again, unfolding it slowly. You got your night. I'll take the rest of my life. 7 words. 7 brutal, clear, irreversible words. He stared at them until his eyes burned. Then he folded the note again, placed it back into his jacket, and walked slowly to the edge of the overlook. Not close enough to fall, just close enough to feel the wind and the consequences of his choices. Because some mistakes don't ruin love. Some mistakes destroy respect. And when respect dies, so does trust. And without trust, love can't breathe. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of everything settle in. The woman he was supposed to marry had walked away without slamming a door. That was strength, and he had no one to blame but himself. Ayanna hadn't cried. Not once. Not in the suite where she read Kellen's message, not when she packed her wedding dress back into the garment bag, not when she dropped the ring into Quinn's hand without a word. She hadn't shed a tear even when they drove past the rooftop where the ceremony was supposed to take place. The hotel tower looked beautiful from a distance, elegant, grand, just like the wedding that never happened. But to Ayanna, that rooftop didn't represent heartbreak. It represented her escape, the exit from a future built on a man's hesitation. Quinn had booked a secluded Airbnb in the Blue Ridge Mountains. No phone calls, no media, no well-meaning friends trying to check in, just a private cabin, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the kind of stillness Ayanna hadn't felt in years. She watched the sunrise the next morning wrapped in a thick blanket, a cup of tea in her hands. Her engagement ring was gone, her inbox full. Her heart, strangely, steady. She wasn't broken. She was awake. In the silence, she opened her journal and flipped to a blank page. She began to write, not about him, about herself, about the way she showed up fully and got half-hearted commitment in return, about how she'd loved with her whole chest while he flirted with the past, about how she wasn't just mourning the man, she was mourning the version of herself that thought staying silent would preserve love. By the time she finished writing, the page was full and her hands weren't shaking anymore. Quinn walked in with a plate of fruit and sat on the floor beside her. "Still not one tear?" Quinn asked. "I'm not sure I have any left," Ayanna answered. "That's not cold," Quinn said. "That's clarity." Ayanna nodded. "I think I needed this," she said. "You think?" I gave him every version of me. The romantic, the ride or die, the planner, the forgiver. And in return, he gave me a question mark the night before our wedding. Quinn exhaled. "You don't walk back from that kind of disrespect." Ayanna looked out the window. "No, you don't," she said. "You walk forward." They stayed in the mountains for 3 days. During the day, Ayanna went on hikes, listened to music, cooked simple meals, and sat in silence. At night, she journaled, wrote down all the things she'd buried under understanding and grace. She realized she had made too many excuses for Kellen's behavior over the years. Not just with Brielle, but in small moments. When he cancelled their vacation for a last-minute meeting, when he forgot her birthday dinner and sent flowers instead, when he brushed off her discomfort as stress. She had trained herself to accommodate, to make space for him. Now, she was reclaiming that space. She wasn't going to live small just to keep someone else feeling big. On the 4th morning, Ayanna packed her bag. Not out of urgency, but intention. She was ready. Back in Atlanta, she didn't go to the penthouse. She didn't want the view. She checked into a boutique hotel on the south side of town, one with no memories, no shared furniture, no ghost of Kellen's cologne on the sheets. Her phone, which she had turned off the entire time, buzzed to life. Messages poured in, some from family, some from press contacts, some from friends she hadn't heard from in months, and 3 missed calls from Kellen. She didn't return any of them. She didn't need to. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was trying to heal herself. Her publicist, Mel, sent a message asking how she wanted to handle the narrative. Ayanna took a deep breath. She hadn't planned to say anything, but staying silent felt like surrender, not just to the press, but to the idea that a woman should quietly vanish after being humiliated. No, she would speak, but on her terms. She texted Mel. "Ayanna, schedule me for 1 interview, 1 outlet, 1 camera, 1 shot. That's it." "Mel, you sure? It'll open a floodgate." "Ayanna, let it flood. I'm not drowning." The interview was set with a popular female journalist known for her honesty and zero tolerance for fluff. The kind of woman who didn't ask about dresses and diamonds, but about dignity. The day of the interview, Ayanna wore no ring, no flashy designer clothes, just a white blouse, natural curls and clear eyes. When the cameras rolled, the first question came soft. "Tell us what happened." Ayanna didn't flinch. "He asked for a night with his ex," she said calmly. "I said yes, but I also said goodbye." The interviewer blinked. "You weren't angry?" I was, Ayana said. But more than that, I was disappointed that someone who claimed to love me could even form that request in his mouth. Do you think he regrets it? I hope he does, but his regret is not my responsibility. The interviewer leaned in. What do you want women to take from this? Ayana smiled, but it wasn't the soft kind. It was the kind that came from wisdom earned the hard way. I want them to know they don't have to explain why they walked away. That loyalty isn't proven by staying when someone disrespects you. It's proven by leaving before you lose yourself. The clip went viral, not just among women, but everywhere. Celebrities retweeted it. Podcasts discussed it. Even late-night shows quoted it. Ayana Brooks didn't cry on camera. She didn't curse or rant. She just told the truth, and the world listened. The morning after the interview aired, Ayana's name trended on social media. Not because she dragged anyone, not because she played victim, but because she told the truth without flinching. No dramatics, no rage, just clarity and a refusal to shrink. Clips of her interview spread like wildfire. Accounts reposted her quote, "Loyalty isn't proven by staying when someone disrespects you. It's proven by leaving before you lose yourself." In a digital world that fed off scandals and emotional meltdowns, Ayana's poise became the loudest message of all. She didn't break down. She broke free. Women messaged her from across the country. One wrote, "Thank you for walking. I stayed, and I lost myself." Another said, "You didn't just leave him. You left the idea that a woman should always forgive. You freed more than yourself." Ayana read every message. She answered as many as she could, but most of all, she let their words settle into her spirit. Her pain had turned into purpose, and with that, a new idea began forming. She no longer wanted to be someone's wife. She wanted to be a woman other women could lean on. That same week, she sat in the back of a small cafe, sipping black coffee while sketching ideas in her notebook. Not just words, concepts, a platform, a movement. She circled 2 words on the page in bold ink: her ground, a space for women to reclaim their footing, to rebuild after being disrespected, devalued or dismissed, a place where healing wasn't performative and strength wasn't defined by how long you stayed silent. She called Quinn. "I have an idea," she said. "I'm listening. I want to create something for women like me, women who've been told to stay quiet, to forgive quickly, to move on for the sake of the man. I want to give them tools to walk away, or if they can't yet, strength to stand." Quinn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'll call the lawyers and secure the name. Her ground is yours." In the following weeks, Ayana worked like a woman reborn. She hired a small team of creatives, developers, therapists, and writers. She turned her ground into a digital sanctuary, offering journal prompts, expert interviews, video workshops, and a forum that centered real stories of self-reclamation. And she made one thing clear to her team: this isn't about hating men. This is about loving ourselves louder than the world tells us to. Meanwhile, Kellen watched the rise of Ayana Brooks from the shadows of his office. He saw the articles, the headlines, the interview clips that played on every morning show, her face on magazine covers, her story used as a talking point in boardrooms. What does her ground mean for corporate culture? And he sat behind his desk, stunned at how the woman who once cooked him dinner barefoot in his penthouse was now a national voice for women reclaiming their worth. He never reached out again. He couldn't. What could he say? "I'm sorry," sounded like a whisper against the roar of her evolution. And even if he did speak, she didn't owe him a response. His company's PR team advised him to keep quiet. "She didn't name you," his manager said. "Don't go adding fuel to a fire that's not aimed at you yet." But the silence stung more than the speculation, because deep down, Kellen didn't want to be invisible in her story. He wanted redemption, closure, something, anything. But Ayana wasn't writing for him. She was writing for herself. Her ground hit 50,000 subscribers in the first month. Ayana began hosting weekly live streams, responding to anonymous questions from women facing hard choices. One evening, she read a question aloud. "My husband cheated. He's sorry. My family says I should forgive him, but I don't even recognize myself anymore. What do I do? Ayanna looked into the camera, voice steady. You do what your peace demands. You don't stay for the kids or the optics or the fear of starting over. You stay only if you believe trust can be rebuilt. And if you can't believe in that anymore, you don't owe anyone an apology for walking. She paused. And if you do choose to walk, know this. There's nothing weak about starting over. What's weak is staying where your value is negotiable. Thousands of viewers typed in comments. Preach. That part. Walking tomorrow. Thank you. The feedback wasn't always supportive. Some criticized her for encouraging divorce culture. Others accused her of emasculating men. But Ayanna never clapped back. She didn't need to defend truth. She simply stayed on message. Reclaiming your ground doesn't require anyone else's permission. During the launch of the Her Ground mobile app, Ayanna stood before a packed room in a black jumpsuit, hair pulled back, no jewelry except for a thin gold bracelet her mother had given her after the cancelled wedding. As she took the mic, she looked over the crowd, faces young and old, women with pain in their past and power in their posture. She smiled. I used to think my value was measured by how much I could endure, how many offenses I could forgive, how long I could wait for someone to choose me. But I was wrong. The crowd listened. My value was never tied to someone else's growth curve. It was always in how quickly I could choose myself again after being dishonored. Applause broke out. Ayanna leaned into the moment. So today, we don't launch just an app. We launch a reminder that you're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. And sometimes the person you're asking is yourself. That evening, her team toasted champagne. Quinn hugged her long and hard. You did it. Ayanna smiled. No, I'm doing it. Because this wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of one she wrote on her own terms. She didn't need a fairy tale. She needed freedom. And now, she had both. The first thing to slip was Kellen's focus. It began with missed calls, ignored emails, meetings where he was physically present but mentally a million miles away. The board noticed. His assistant noticed. Even the junior developers whispered about how Mr. Royce hasn't been himself lately. He'd built a billion-dollar company with precision and discipline. He was the man who could predict market swings before they made headlines. But now, even the smallest decisions felt heavy. He no longer cared about product pitches or investor updates. He just stared at screens and nodded like a man checking boxes in a life he no longer believed in. Because somewhere deep down, he knew he had fumbled the one thing he couldn't afford to lose. Not his company, not his wealth, but Ayanna. His mind replayed her last words again and again, looping like a punishment, then go. But don't come back expecting me to be here. She had kept her promise. He had expected drama, maybe tears, a confrontation, something. But Ayanna had left him with quiet finality, and a note so composed it hurt worse than anything she could have screamed. You got your night. I'll take the rest of my life. It echoed, especially when the world started celebrating her. At first, he tried to avoid the media. He muted her name on social platforms, turned off the TV during her interviews, avoided conversations in the office when her story came up. But her ground wasn't just a headline. It was everywhere. Billboards, podcasts, magazine covers, even casual conversations in the elevator. She's so powerful. I wish I had her strength. She didn't just walk. She glided. It wasn't bitterness he felt. It was emptiness. She had been his compass. The quiet balance to his chaotic drive. The woman who'd sit on the kitchen counter in his shirt, laughing about something random, grounding him after long days. Now that laughter turned into sound bites that inspired millions and haunted one. Him. His personal life wasn't the only thing unraveling. The company had issues. Investors were growing uneasy. Public trust in Royce Technologies had dipped ever since Kellen skipped 2 major appearances and fumbled a merger call with a key international partner. There were whispers that he wasn't emotionally stable enough to lead. His board scheduled an emergency review. One of the CO founders, a longtime friend, finally confronted him in the executive lounge. "Man, what's going on with you?" Kellen sat there in a $7,000 chair in a $15,000 suit and didn't know how to answer. The truth was embarrassing. He had all the tools to build empires, but failed to protect the heart of one woman. And now, he couldn't even protect his own peace. "I lost her," he said flatly. "Then win her back," the friend said. Kellen shook his head. "She doesn't want to be won." The friend leaned back. "Then fix what you can control. Or step down before they force you to." It was a sobering conversation. Later that night, Kellen sat in his penthouse alone. The silence wasn't new, but it felt heavier. He walked past the closet Ayanna once used. It was empty. He opened the fridge, still stocked with her favorite almond milk she used for smoothies. Unused. He wandered into the living room and turned on the TV. Her face appeared immediately. Another Her Ground interview. He didn't change the channel. This time, he watched. She looked radiant, glowing in a fitted navy dress, minimal makeup, eyes full of focus. The audience applauded something she had just said. The host leaned in, smiling. "What would you say to women watching this who are scared to walk away, even though they know they should?" Ayanna didn't miss a beat. "I'd tell them, you're not hard to love. You're just hard to fool." The audience snapped and clapped. Kellen closed his eyes and swallowed hard. The screen shifted to a pre-recorded promo for her upcoming event, Her Ground, the Healing Summit, coming to 5 cities this fall. He turned the volume down, but the message stayed with him. This woman he once asked to wait while he revisited the past, she was now speaking to the future. And he wasn't part of it. Still, he couldn't ignore the growing ache inside. The one whispering that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't done. Not with her. Not with the man he used to be when she loved him. He stood, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out the leather journal Ayanna had gifted him a year before. He never used it. Thought journaling was soft. But now, he opened it and started writing. Not to her. To himself. "You gave up the safest love you ever had because pride whispered louder than peace. You didn't need a night with your ex. You needed to believe someone still wanted you. But Ayanna didn't just want you, she chose you. And you let her down." He paused, then added, "The world doesn't need another powerful CEO. It needs more men who honor the women who stand beside them." He closed the journal, then stared at it. There was still time to become that man, but whether she would ever care again, that part was out of his hands. Kellen Royce began showing up again, not to parties, not to fundraisers or social events where everyone wore masks and pretended nothing had ever gone wrong. He showed up to work, quietly, early, and for the first time in years, without his ego leading the way. His staff noticed the difference. He didn't bark orders. He asked questions. He didn't interrupt. He listened. He began spending less time in the boardroom and more time with the product team, the very people who used to be intimidated by him. Now they found him approachable, human. But behind the progress, Kellen carried a weight that never left. Ayanna. She lingered in every moment of silence. Every strong woman he encountered reminded him of her strength. Every time he read a success story posted on Her Ground, he saw her fingerprints in the victories of others. There was no escaping it. Her decision to walk away had changed him more than any business failure ever had. One evening, Kellen sat in his office after everyone had left. The city lights outside the window twinkled like distant reminders of how far he'd fallen from the life he once had. He picked up his phone. Her name was still saved at the top of his favorites list. He hadn't texted. Not since that night. Not once. But tonight, his fingers hovered over the keyboard longer than usual. He typed, "I see you, and I understand now." He deleted it. Then typed, "You were never asking for too much. I was giving too little." Deleted. Again. Eventually, he set the phone down. She didn't need his words anymore. She had her ground. She had her audience. She had herself. Kellen leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. For a man who had always been in control, it was humbling to realize he had no control over what mattered most. That was the final lesson Ayana had taught him. You don't get to choose how a woman heals after you fail her. Meanwhile, Ayana sat in a candlelit room surrounded by 30 women, all seated in a circle on soft pillows and warm rugs. They were attending one of her ground's first in-person healing retreats. The room was quiet, except for the soft instrumental music playing in the background, and the occasional sniffle from someone processing something deeply personal. Ayana waited until the silence settled fully. Then she spoke. "You're here because you chose you," she said. "And for some of you, that's the first time you've ever done that." Women nodded. Some had recently left relationships. Some were still in them, trying to figure out how to break free. Some had simply lost themselves trying to be everything for everyone else. Ayana continued. "I left my wedding, not because he was a monster, but because he didn't protect me. He protected his past, his comfort, his confusion, and that wasn't the man I could build a future with." She took a deep breath. "And I don't regret it." A woman across the room whispered, "I wish I had that courage." Ayana smiled gently. "It's not courage, it's clarity. Courage is what gets you out the door. But clarity, that's what keeps you from walking back in." The room erupted in soft snaps and murmurs of agreement. After the circle session ended, Ayana stepped outside onto the retreat center's balcony. The night air was cool, the moon full. Quinn joined her with 2 cups of tea. "You know," Quinn said, handing her a cup, "he's still quiet." Ayana didn't ask who she meant. She knew. "Let him stay quiet," she said. "I think he's changed." Ayana took a sip. "I believe that too. So," Quinn raised an eyebrow, "would you ever talk to him?" Ayana leaned on the railing. Her answer wasn't immediate. "I might," she finally said. "Not for closure, I gave that to myself. But maybe for peace." Quinn nodded. "You're stronger now." "I was always strong," Ayana said. "I just stopped letting people confuse silence with strength." They stood there a while, watching the trees sway gently below. Later that night, after the guests had all gone to bed and the property had quieted down, Ayana pulled out her phone. No missed calls, no messages from him. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't need one. Not for validation, not for revenge, not for reunion. She was at peace. She didn't regret walking away from the wedding. She didn't regret walking toward herself. And she didn't fear seeing him again, because she now knew the difference between a man who begged for a second chance and one who earned it. It had been 5 months since the wedding that never happened. Ayana hadn't seen Kellen, hadn't spoken to him, not even through lawyers or mutual friends. She didn't ask about him, and when people brought him up, she shifted the conversation, not because she was bitter, she was beyond that, but because she had outgrown the need to explain why she left a man who questioned her worth. But healing doesn't erase history, and history always circles back. On a brisk Friday afternoon in New York, Ayana was scheduled to appear at a bookstore in Soho to sign copies of her debut memoir, Not Walking Back. The book had become a bestseller in its first week, a blend of personal essays, hard truths, and guiding questions for women who felt stuck between staying and saving themselves. The store was packed. A line wrapped around the block. Inside, Ayana greeted each woman like she was the only one in the room. Warm, smile, direct eye contact, a quick but sincere word of encouragement. "You don't need their apology to start over," she told one woman. "You're not complicated, you're deep," she told another. She signed until her hand cramped, pausing only for water and a breath. Then it happened. She looked up and froze. Kellen stood just a few feet away, waiting quietly in line. No entourage, no press, just him, in a black coat and dark jeans, hair slightly longer, eyes deeper, a little more tired, but not broken. She blinked once, twice. He held no book in his hand. He wasn't here for an autograph. She excused herself gently from the table and signaled her assistant to handle the next few guests. Then she walked toward him, heels steady, spine straighter than ever. They stood facing each other in the middle of a bookstore full of women watching them. like a live scene from a film they had all read about but never expected to see. Ayana spoke first. "I didn't expect to see you here. I wasn't sure I'd come," he replied. "Yet here you are, because I needed to see you face to face." She crossed her arms gently, more out of habit than defense. "You had 5 months. I wasn't ready 5 months ago," he said. Not to explain, to accept. Ayana tilted her head. "Accept what? That I failed you? And that you were right to leave?" She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Kellen continued. "I've watched you grow, heard your interviews, read your words. I've watched the world hear the same truths you used to say to me when I was too arrogant to listen." His voice was steady, but his eyes held remorse. Not pity, not desperation. Remorse. "I didn't come here to win you back," he added. "I came because there was one thing I never got to say that night." Ayana waited. "I see you," he said quietly. "Not as the woman I almost married. As the woman who saved me from becoming a man I would have hated." That made her inhale slowly. She didn't expect that, and she didn't know what to do with it. So she said, "Do you want forgiveness?" Kellen looked at her, steady. "No. I want your peace." For the first time in their conversation, Ayana softened. "I gave myself peace the moment I wrote that note." "I know," he said. "And I've read it 100 times since." "You kept it?" "It's in my wallet." That part stung, because it meant he'd been carrying her final words like a prayer or a scar. A silence settled between them. Finally, Ayana spoke again. "There's a coffee shop around the corner," she said. "I have 30 minutes after this signing. No promises, no illusions, just conversation." Kellen nodded. "I'd be honored." The cafe was small, tucked between a vintage bookstore and a florist shop that sold eucalyptus in paper-wrapped bundles. It smelled like cinnamon and quiet comfort. No cameras, no followers, just steam rising from ceramic mugs and the soft hum of indie music overhead. Ayana and Kellen sat across from each other at a corner table near the window. Neither of them spoke at first. They didn't have to. The weight of everything unsaid filled the space like a third presence at the table. Kellen stirred his coffee, though he hadn't added anything to it. Ayana took one slow sip of her tea, then set the cup down and looked at him. "So," she said, her voice measured, "why now?" Kellen met her eyes. "Because I couldn't live with pretending I didn't ruin something good. I didn't come to ask you for a second chance. I came to return your dignity in person, not just in words." She narrowed her gaze slightly. "I never lost my dignity." Kellen nodded. "You're right. You didn't. I'm the one who lost sight of it. And for a long time, I told myself that being honest about my past was noble, that transparency was enough. But it wasn't. I weaponized my honesty to avoid accountability. I knew asking to see Brielle would cut you, and I still did it." Ayana didn't flinch. "You did it because you weren't ready to let go of who you used to be," she said. "And I was already building who I wanted to become." Kellen exhaled. "Exactly." They paused while a server dropped off a second pot of tea and offered a kind smile neither of them returned fully. After the server walked away, Kellen leaned forward slightly. "I didn't realize until after you left that your silence was louder than any breakup text or fight. You didn't scream. You didn't humiliate me. You walked away with your name, your story, and your spine intact. And I had to watch the world praise you for the strength I once took for granted." Ayana sat back. "And now you want what? My approval? My blessing for your growth?" "No," he said quickly. "Not your blessing. Just the chance to say that I'm proud of you, that everything you built, you did it without me, and you didn't need my pain to fuel it. You used your power." Ayana didn't smile, but she didn't shut him down either. "I didn't build her ground to get back at you," she said. "I built it because I knew there were women out there just like me. Women waiting for someone to say, 'You can leave. You can say no. You don't have to beg for respect.'" Kellen nodded again. "I know that now." She studied him for a moment. His hands were steady. No arrogance in his posture. No forced charm. "You've changed," she said. "I had to." She tilted her head slightly. Change is good, but so is letting go. And I know. And you understand, we're not here to fix anything. He gave a small nod. I didn't come to fix, I came to release. You deserved better. I didn't see that when it counted. They sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was mutual, warm, final. Ayanna picked up her tea and took another sip. I hope you find someone, she said after a while. Not to replace me, but to appreciate who you've become. Kellen smiled softly. I hope the same for you, though I'd be lying if I said I don't already believe you have. She didn't confirm or deny it. And he didn't ask, because that wasn't his place anymore. The check came, and Kellen reached for it. Ayanna let him. It was a small thing, but it didn't feel transactional. It felt respectful. As they stepped outside into the cold breeze, Kellen turned to her one last time. Thank you for the coffee. Ayanna gave him a nod. Thank you for showing up like this. It matters. He hesitated, then pulled something from his wallet. Her note, folded, worn at the edges. I'm going to keep this, he said. Not because it hurts, but because it reminds me of the line between love and self-abandonment. Ayanna's eyes lingered on it. You should rewrite it, she said, in your own handwriting. It's yours now. Kellen looked at her, surprised, then nodded. They stood there for a moment longer, then slowly turned in opposite directions and walked away. No drama, no final hug, no hopeful glance over the shoulder. Just two people, once tangled, now free. Ayanna didn't cry. Kellen didn't chase. They both understood something most people never learn. Closure isn't a door slamming shut. It's two people choosing not to reopen what already closed with clarity. Have you ever had that one conversation that finally set you free? Tell us in the comments, what would you have said at that cafe table? Like this video if you believe closure doesn't need a second chance. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real stories that stay with you. 2 months passed quietly. No more interviews, no viral quotes, no unexpected cafe meetings. Ayanna had slipped back into her life with purpose, not hiding, just no longer explaining. She had said everything she needed to say, to Kellen, to the world, to herself. Her ground was thriving, but she wasn't chasing headlines anymore. She had shifted her focus from being the story to supporting others who needed space to write theirs. She had found peace, and unexpectedly, she had also found something else. Someone else. His name was Miles. He wasn't famous, not a CEO, not an influencer, not connected to any elite social circle. He was an urban planner who loved community gardens, vinyl records, and hiking trails no one else knew about. He worked with underserved neighborhoods and lit up when talking about sidewalks, green, space, and affordable housing in ways that made Ayanna smile without meaning to. They met at a panel event where she had been invited to speak about emotional recovery and public wellness. He had been there to discuss urban healing spaces. When he spoke, he didn't try to impress anyone. He told stories about building benches near clinics so mothers could sit while waiting for their prescriptions. He talked about the importance of shade trees in neighborhoods that had none. He didn't posture. He served. After the event, he approached her, not as a fan, but as a listener. I appreciated how you talked about reclaiming space, he said. I spend my life designing physical spaces. It's good to be reminded that internal ones matter too. Ayanna had smiled. It was genuine. They grabbed coffee. That led to a walk through a neighborhood park he had designed. He showed her where the sun hit at just the right angle in the evenings, and where he planned to plant a row of cherry blossoms next spring. He didn't ask about Kellen. He didn't mention her ground. He didn't treat her like a story, just a person. By their third outing, Ayanna realized something important. She felt calm around him, not excited, not nervous. Just at ease. It was unfamiliar and beautiful. One evening, they sat on a bench near a community garden that overlooked the city. It wasn't glamorous. It smelled faintly of mulch and lavender. But Ayanna felt more herself there than she ever had in any penthouse. Miles leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Can I ask something?" Ayana nodded. "Sure. What scares you most about dating again?" She didn't rush her answer. "I'm not afraid of love," she said. "I'm afraid of performing for it." He looked at her gently. "I'm not here to watch a performance." She believed him. She smiled softly. "And you?" He exhaled. "I'm not afraid of being needed. I'm afraid of being someone's trophy." "You're not," she said. "You're too grounded to be mounted." They both laughed. From then on, it wasn't about rushing or defining things. It was about rhythm. And with Miles, the rhythm was steady. One morning, Ayana walked through the farmer's market with him, sunglasses on, hair pulled back into a casual bun, canvas tote over her shoulder. They stopped at a honey vendor, tasted samples, then moved toward the florals. As they stood deciding between sunflowers or peonies, a woman nearby gasped softly. "Oh my God, Ayana Brooks." Ayana turned, smiled kindly. "Hi, I saw you speak at the Her Ground Summit in Charlotte," the woman said. "You changed my life. I left a 6-year relationship because of you. Thank you." Ayana nodded. "You didn't leave because of me. You left because you remembered who you were." The woman beamed and walked away. Miles looked at Ayana, a curious expression on his face. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "It's just strange sometimes. Being known for the worst part of your past." He looked her in the eye. "You're not known for what happened to you. You're known for how you responded." That touched something inside her. They walked for a while, hand in hand. Later that afternoon, a paparazzi photo surfaced online. A simple shot, Ayana laughing, head tilted back, while Miles held her hand and a bouquet of peonies. The caption, "Ayana Brooks moves on with Mystery Man, dignity in motion." Kellen saw the photo. He stared at it longer than he should have. She looked happy, genuinely happy. He didn't zoom in, didn't screenshot, didn't send it to anyone. He simply closed his phone and let the silence settle. For the first time, he wasn't sad. He was grateful. Because sometimes, when you truly love someone, the lesson isn't about how long you hold on. It's about knowing when to let go with grace. Miles didn't ask for details, but he listened when Ayana offered them. She told him about the rooftop wedding that never happened, about the envelope, the silence, and the decision to walk away. She didn't rush the story. She didn't center it around pain. She simply told the truth. When she finished, Miles didn't try to comfort her with cliches. He didn't offer a dozen affirmations. He just said, "Thank you for trusting me with that." And that was enough. They weren't in love, not yet. But there was something more valuable between them, mutual respect, space to breathe, and the quiet understanding that no one needed to perform to be worthy. One evening, they sat in Ayana's apartment, watching the sunset through her wide windows. It was a simple place, nowhere near the grand penthouse she once shared with Kellen, but it felt like home. Her walls were lined with framed affirmations from her ground, handwritten letters from supporters, and one black and white photo of her mother laughing. Miles sat on the floor, leaning against the couch, a sketchbook in his lap. Ayana lay across the cushions, half listening to the low jazz playing from the speaker. "Do you miss him?" Miles asked gently, not accusing, just curious. Ayana thought for a moment, then nodded. "Not him, not who he was. I miss what I thought we were building. I miss the version of me who still believed love alone was enough." He nodded slowly, flipping a page in his sketchbook. Grief doesn't always wear a black dress. Sometimes it just shows up as a quiet ache. She glanced down at the page. "What are you drawing?" "A bench." She laughed. "Just a bench?" "Not just any bench," he said. "A place for women to sit, to think, to rest. I want to install one under a tree in the new community garden we're building. And I want to name it after you." Ayana blinked. "Me." He looked up. "Her ground. It started because you walked away. Now I want to build a physical space where others can sit and breathe when life gets too loud." She didn't cry, but her throat tightened. That's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in a long time. I don't want to be kind, Miles said. I want to be consistent. Ayanna sat up, her heart doing something unexpected, expanding. Because for the first time since the wedding that wasn't, she saw a new possibility, not a replacement, a renewal. Elsewhere in Atlanta, Kellen sat across from a therapist. Not because someone made him go, because he finally wanted to sit in a room where he didn't have to be the CEO, the fixer, or the man who always had a plan. Just a man who'd made mistakes and wanted to understand why. The therapist asked, "When did you first realize you valued control more than connection?" He didn't have an immediate answer, but he stayed. Week after week, session after session, he peeled back layers he'd never touched before. He examined the way he viewed loyalty, as something earned from silence, not trust. He admitted he had let his ego speak louder than his heart the night he left Ayanna alone. He unpacked how he had chased power so long, he forgot how to cherish presence. And most importantly, he stopped blaming timing, trauma, and everything in between. He owned it, and in that ownership, he stopped romanticizing the past. He stopped wishing Ayanna would call. Stopped checking her ground site hoping for a hidden message meant for him. Instead, he let her go. Because healing isn't always about getting someone back. Sometimes, it's about becoming someone new, without needing to be seen for it. One crisp Saturday morning, Ayanna stood at the new community garden Miles had spent months helping design. A crowd had gathered. Children ran between flower beds. Volunteers painted wooden signs. Miles unveiled the bench beneath a blooming dogwood tree. It was simple. Smooth oak wood, curved armrests, and a brass plate that read, "For the woman who stood her ground, so others could find theirs." Ayanna touched the engraving. Overcome. The crowd clapped. Miles kissed her cheek, then whispered, "No pressure. But this is your seat whenever life asks too much." She smiled. "I think I'll sit for a while." And she did. She sat in silence, watching life unfold. No makeup, no press, no headlines. Just breath and peace. Ayanna's life had become quieter, but it was far from small. After the book event where Kellen showed up, she noticed a strange shift in her mind. Closure wasn't loud. It was subtle, and it settled in like peace after a storm. She no longer needed to look over her shoulder or question her past decisions. The next morning, she made her favorite ginger lemon tea and opened her laptop. Emails flooded in, podcast invites, partnership offers, keynote speeches. Her ground was now a full-blown movement. Women were reshaping their lives, inspired not just by her story, but by the community Ayanna had helped build. And now she had a new mission: expand internationally. She tapped on a message from a London-based women's conference, inviting her as the headline speaker. Subject: her ground is needed in Europe. Her eyes widened. The scale of what she'd created no longer surprised her. But the reach? That still felt surreal. She clicked. Accept. Later that week, as she was finalizing travel plans, a soft knock came at her office door. It was Jade, her brand manager and closest friend since college. "Everything good?" Jade asked, settling into the armchair opposite her. Ayanna nodded. "I'm flying to London next month." Keynote. Jade's eyes sparkled. "You're becoming the voice for every woman who's ever been made to question her worth." Ayanna looked down briefly, absorbing that statement. She didn't start her ground with a plan to become iconic. She just needed something to help her survive, to breathe. And now? Now she was helping thousands do the same. "Are you okay after seeing him?" Jade asked. Ayanna didn't flinch. "Yeah, I was ready. I didn't know it until I looked at him, but I was..." Closure? Not quite. But understanding. They talked a bit longer before Jade left her to prep for a virtual interview. As Ayanna adjusted her lighting and mic, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello, Ms. Brooks. I represent a private investment group interested in partnering with her ground for a wellness tech platform." Ayanna's heart skipped slightly, not because of the opportunity, but because of who the sender was. The name at the bottom, Isaac Hale, that name wasn't unfamiliar. He was a well-known venture capitalist, but what caught her attention wasn't his resume, it was the fact that he had quietly funded multiple women-owned wellness brands without ever stepping into the spotlight. She responded simply, "Let's set up a meeting." 3 days later, Ayana walked into a clean, glass-paneled meeting room inside a quiet co-working space in Manhattan. No big corporate boardrooms, no marble lobbies, just simplicity. A man stood as she entered, early 40s, kind eyes, neatly trimmed beard, navy suit, no tie. "Ms. Brooks," he said, offering his hand. "I'm Isaac." His voice was calm, grounded, not performative, not trying to impress. "Nice to meet you," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. They sat across from each other, portfolios open, tablets out. But before any formal pitch began, Isaac looked directly at her. "I read your book," he said. "Twice. I gave it to my sister, my niece, and every female founder I've ever mentored." Ayana's brows raised slightly. She didn't expect that. "Thank you. That means a lot." "No, thank you," he said. "You didn't just share your story. You changed the rules." They got into the numbers, her ground's growth, user base, product lines, and future goals. Isaac's pitch wasn't flashy. He wasn't offering millions up front. He was offering infrastructure, global logistics, technical build-out, emotional, health advisors, and a platform that could digitize her ground's principles. More than a deal. It felt like alignment. After an hour, he leaned back. "I'll leave the proposal with you. No pressure. I want to partner if it serves your mission, not if it distracts you from it." She smiled. "I appreciate that." As she stood to leave, he paused. "Also, if you ever want to talk outside of work, coffee, tea, lunch, I'd like that." She gave him a knowing glance. "Are you asking me out, Mr. Hale?" "I'm asking you if you'd like to talk to someone who respects what you've built and won't ask you to shrink for him." Ayana didn't answer immediately. She nodded politely and walked out. But her mind? It stayed behind for a moment. That night, she journaled, not about Isaac, but about how she felt seen for the first time in a long time, not as someone, as ex, or a woman who walked away from a billionaire, but as herself. Ayana Brooks, builder, healer, survivor. She scribbled one line before closing her journal. "Respect isn't a luxury, it's a foundation," and she slept better than she had in months. The following week, her grounds team gathered at their headquarters for the monthly strategy meeting. Everyone buzzed about the London expansion, but Ayana had something else to share. "I've decided we're building a digital platform," she announced. The room quieted. "It'll connect women globally. Courses, guided healing sessions, peer-to-peer support, mental health partners, all in one place. And I'm considering a partnership that can get us there faster." Jade leaned forward. "Isaac?" Ayana nodded. "He seems solid," Jade said. "And you smiled after that meeting, like for real smiled." Ayana laughed. "Let's keep this professional, please." The team chuckled, but the mood was electric. They weren't just running a brand. They were starting a movement. After the meeting, Ayana texted Isaac, "Tea sounds good. This Friday?" He responded within a minute. Looking forward to it. As she put her phone down, Ayana stared out the window. The skyline glittered, familiar but ever-changing. So was she, not defined by heartbreak, not waiting to be chosen. She was already her own home. The cafe Isaac suggested wasn't in the usual high-end spots celebrities and CEOs frequented. It was a tucked-away tea house in the West Village. Wooden tables, no Wi-Fi, handwritten menus, everything about it whispered intention. Ayana arrived 10 minutes early. She wore a deep emerald blouse and sleek black trousers. Her curls were pinned back, her makeup soft, powerfully subtle. She wasn't trying to impress. She was showing up as herself. When Isaac arrived, he looked relaxed. Charcoal sweater, rolled sleeves, leather-bound notebook in hand. "Good to see you," he said, and they embraced briefly. Not out of familiarity but respect. "Same here," Ayana replied. They ordered a pot of jasmine green tea, No phones, no interruptions. "I didn't expect you to say yes," Isaac said. "I didn't expect to want to," she answered. He didn't press. He let her set the tone. "I've been asked out a lot lately," Ayanna said. "Some want the brand, others want the story. Few want the woman." Isaac nodded slowly. "And I want the woman. If she ever wants to be seen beyond her brand, if she ever wants space to rest, not explain." Ayanna looked at him. There was no flattery in his tone, no performance, just honesty. "I left a man who didn't understand that," she said. "Someone who thought love was a permission slip instead of a promise." Isaac leaned forward slightly. "Do you still love him?" Ayanna stirred her tea, thoughtful. "No, but I remember the girl who did." He sat with that for a moment, then said, "I hope she's proud of the woman you've become." She met his gaze and smiled. They talked for 2 hours about business, books, music, childhood. His mother, who raised him and 3 siblings on a teacher's salary. Her grandmother, who used to say, "Silence is a woman's sharpest wisdom." Not once did Isaac bring up Kellen. Not once did he ask to be compared. And that was the most refreshing part. When they stepped outside, a light drizzle had started. Isaac opened his umbrella. "May I?" he asked. She nodded, stepping under it beside him. They walked to the corner, the city around them humming in muted rhythm. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "I'd like that," she replied. He hailed a cab for her, held the door, and didn't try to kiss her. He didn't need to. Ayanna sat in the back seat, quiet, not giddy, not anxious, just calm. It was new, and it was welcome. The following weeks moved fast. Her Ground's digital platform was underway. The London event was a success. Standing ovation, viral clips, articles dubbing her the healer who walked away. But through all the noise, Isaac remained consistent. He texted good mornings, not demands. He offered help, never overstepping. He celebrated wins without making them about himself. One evening, Ayanna invited him to a small dinner at her home. No staff, no spotlight, just her, Isaac, Jade, and a couple close friends from college. They played music, ate too much, laughed loud. Later, as they washed dishes together, Isaac said, "You know what I admire most about you?" Ayanna glanced up. "What?" "You didn't become hard after the heartbreak. You just became clear." She paused, letting that sink in. "I didn't want to become bitter," she said, "but I also didn't want to pretend I wasn't broken." Isaac handed her a towel. "Healing looks good on you." They didn't kiss, not that night. But the way he looked at her, it made her feel held. A few days later, her Ground hosted a workshop for young women in underserved communities. Ayanna sat in a circle with 15 girls, aged 14 to 19. One of them, a shy girl named Kira, asked, "How do you know when to walk away?" Ayanna answered carefully, "When staying costs you more than leaving ever could." The room went still. Another girl asked, "Do you ever miss him?" Ayanna replied, "I don't miss the person. I miss who I used to be when I believed in us. But now, I believe in me more." Applause wasn't needed. The silence was loud enough. That evening, she got a text from Kellen. Just 2 words, "Thank you." She didn't reply, not because she was angry, but because she no longer needed to carry the conversation forward. Kellen had become a ghost of a life she outgrew, a lesson, not a longing. She put down her phone, walked to the balcony, and looked out over the city. Lights flickered, horns sounded below. But inside her, peace. A knock on the door. It was Isaac. In his hand, a small package. "I had this made," he said. She opened it. A leather-bound notebook, etched with gold lettering. Her Ground, Ayanna's unpublished pages. She touched the cover gently. "You remembered?" "I listen," he said simply. This time, she stepped closer. No rush, no nerves. And they kissed. Not like a beginning, like a continuation of peace. The morning sun crept in through the tall windows of Ayanna's brownstone. She stood in the kitchen in one of her signature satin robes, coffee in hand, watching the city stir to life. It had been weeks since she last heard Kellen's name, and months since she allowed his actions to define her emotions. But life, with all its irony, always circled back when least expected. Quinn called. He's doing a press conference. Ayanna turned toward the sound of her phone on speaker. Kellen? Yes, Quinn confirmed. Looks like damage control. The shareholders are restless. The rumors, the performance slump, it's all finally catching up. Ayanna said nothing. She walked into the media lounge in red, Quinn added. Brielle. Ayanna raised an eyebrow. He brought her to his press conference. She brought herself. That made more sense. On screen, Kellen Royce looked smaller. Still in a tailored navy suit, but there was a slackness in his shoulders. His voice, though composed, carried a weight it never used to. Behind the perfect grooming and polished PR words, you could see it, regret. He ended with a prepared statement. I made choices that cost me more than business or headlines. They cost me character. I've spent the past year reflecting, rebuilding, and learning. I ask not for sympathy, but for accountability, because the people we hurt should never have to carry our lessons. It would have landed harder if Brielle wasn't standing a few feet away, giving smug half-smiles to the camera crew. Ayanna turned off the TV. Later that evening, Ayanna went for a walk. No security, no entourage, just her and the city. She stopped by her neighborhood bookstore to drop off signed copies of her latest release. The ground beneath her feet, then ducked into a small gelato shop across the street. She sat at the window, spooning hazelnut swirl and watching life unfold. A couple argued across the sidewalk. A man danced with a little girl on a stoop. A group of teens laughed over their phones. Real life. Unscripted, unfiltered. Isaac arrived 20 minutes later. I thought you might be here, he said, slipping into the seat beside her. You know me well. I learn fast. They shared her gelato. She turned to him. Can I tell you something honest? Please do. I'm scared, she said. Not of him anymore, but of how much I like where this is going. Isaac didn't flinch. Love shouldn't be safe, Ayanna, but it should be secure. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I've built walls, branded ones, feminist ones, survival ones. I see them, he said softly. But I also see the windows in them. She laughed lightly. You're good at this. I'm good at seeing you. Her ground hit 1 million subscribers that month. Not just followers, community. Women posted testimonials. Teens sent letters. Therapists reached out asking to collaborate. Ayanna's inbox flooded with stories of survival, grief, betrayal, and reclamation. She read every one. Some made her cry. Others made her pause and breathe deeply. But all reminded her of why she chose not to show up to that rooftop wedding. Why walking away wasn't weakness. It was clarity. One afternoon, during an interview, a journalist asked, if you could go back to that moment, when Kellen asked for a night with his ex, what would you say differently? Ayanna smiled. Nothing, but I'd send the prenup text faster. The room laughed, but Ayanna's eyes were steady. That answer wasn't for applause. It was for every woman still stuck in a chair, waiting for someone to pick her over their past. Then, one night, it happened. She and Isaac were at a small gala supporting literacy programs for inner-city girls. Ayanna gave a brief keynote. Isaac presented a donation. The event was elegant, intimate. As the evening ended, a voice cut through the crowd. Ayanna. She turned. Kellen, in person this time. Grey suit. Slimmer frame, same eyes. But she wasn't shaken. He approached. May I? She nodded once. Isaac stepped aside, respectfully. Kellen looked at her. You're stunning. Still observant, she replied. I didn't come to win you back. Good. I just wanted to say, I understand now. Ayanna folded her arms, waiting. I confused loyalty with comfort. Thought familiarity meant foundation. I broke something that was built with grace, not greed. Ayanna exhaled. I hope you treat your next commitment better. I'm not sure I'll have one, he said, but I treat myself better now, because of you. She looked him in the eyes. "That's all I ever wanted." He extended a hand. "Take care, Ayanna." She shook it. "Goodbye, Kellen." And it was. Outside, under the city lights, Isaac stood waiting. Ayanna slipped her arm around his. "Done?" he asked. "Done." They walked down the steps, into the hum of New York's night. Not as a woman healing from heartbreak, but as a woman no longer afraid of starting over. 3 months after that final encounter with Kellen, Ayanna's days no longer carried the echo of what-ifs. Her mornings began with quiet meditations, followed by a smoothie she didn't have to rush through. She wore confidence like it was stitched into her skin, and her name now carried weight beyond society. Pages. It was printed across bookstores, universities, women's shelters, and business panels. Her ground was no longer just a brand. It was a movement. She sat across from a panel moderator in Chicago, where she had just been, honored as one of the top 20 voices reshaping female leadership. It was a full room, wall to wall with industry professionals, press, and young women clutching copies of her latest book. "Ayanna," the moderator began, "when people hear your story, many of them say you redefined power, not through revenge, but through poise. What gave you the strength to walk away from someone like Kellen Royce?" Ayanna smiled, adjusting the gold cuff bracelet on her wrist. "I didn't walk away from Kellen," she replied calmly. "I walked back to myself. He was just standing in the way." The crowd erupted with applause. Cameras flashed. Nods of understanding swept the room. Later, backstage, Ayanna exhaled. These moments still felt surreal. She hadn't started her ground to be seen. She started it because she had been made to feel invisible. Now the platform had outgrown her own story. She changed into a navy sweater and high-waisted jeans, slipping into her low-heeled boots. No more red carpets or couture dresses. These days, comfort came first. Authenticity was non-negotiable. Her phone buzzed. "Isaac. Isaac, I'm downstairs. I brought warm cookies and bad jazz." She smiled. "Ayanna, I accept both." He was waiting in a sleek black SUV, holding a paper bag from a local bakery and playing a jazz playlist that sounded like someone had spilled bourbon on a saxophone. "You were brilliant," he said as she climbed in. "I was honest," she replied, unwrapping a warm double chocolate cookie. They drove through the city. Isaac didn't talk much when Ayanna needed silence, and Ayanna didn't fill quiet spaces out of habit anymore. With him, silence felt shared, not lonely. As they passed Millennium Park, she reached over and laced her fingers through his. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For showing up without needing to fix me." Isaac turned to her. "Ayanna, you were never broken. You were just being held back." Her eyes glossed. Not from sadness, from the unfamiliar comfort of being understood. Back at the hotel, they curled up in bed, the TV murmuring in the background while Isaac ran his fingers through her curls. Ayanna's head rested on his chest, eyes closed, listening to the rhythm of someone who didn't lie or need her silence to thrive. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had said yes?" she asked. "To Kellen?" "Mm-hmm." Isaac brushed a kiss on her forehead. "You'd have lost the chance to build the life you really wanted. You'd have spent your days making yourself smaller to fit his doubts." Ayanna nodded, "And I'd never have learned how strong I was alone." They fell asleep like that, no promises whispered in the dark. Just peace. The next morning, Ayanna stood on the balcony sipping coffee, watching. The sky over Lake Michigan stretched into hues of amber and silver. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Quinn. "Quinn, CNN just published a feature. Headline, How Ayanna Brooks Turned Betrayal into a Billion-Dollar Empire." She chuckled. Isaac came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Good news?" he asked. "I think I'm a case study now." He smiled into her neck. "You've always been an example. Now the world knows it too." They were flying back to New York later that afternoon, where her ground was launching its new mentoring division, Anne. initiative pairing young women from underserved communities with career coaches, therapists, and confidence trainers. Ayanna would speak at the launch, but she insisted the girls be the stars of the event. She wanted them to feel seen in a world that often skipped over their brilliance. Back in New York, her face now appeared on digital billboards in Times Square. Her ground merchandise was worn by women of all backgrounds, and most meaningful of all, the brand now funded full-ride scholarships for women who had survived intimate betrayal or abuse and rebuilt their lives. Ayanna often received letters, not from fans, but from women. A former nurse who left a toxic marriage and started a home care business. A mother of 3 who finally filed for divorce after reading Ayanna's story and secured a better life for her daughters. Even teenage girls who had grown up watching adults settle for less, now choosing to speak up in their own lives. Ayanna read every single one, sometimes in bed, sometimes at her desk, and sometimes alone on a park bench, weeping quietly and smiling at the same time. At the Her Ground launch, the room was alive with energy. Posters of graduates from the mentorship pilot lined the walls. A DJ played upbeat soul music, and food trucks parked outside served everything from jerk tacos to vegan sliders. Ayanna stood backstage, waiting to be introduced. She looked out at the crowd, mostly young women, many of them wide-eyed and full of questions. Isaac stood off to the side, camera in hand, nodding supportively. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC boomed, "please welcome the founder of Her Ground, best-selling author and unapologetic advocate for self-worth, Ms. Ayanna Brooks." Applause thundered. Ayanna walked onto the stage in a burnt-orange blazer, her afro pulled up into a soft crown, her voice clear and steady. She scanned the crowd. Some girls were already crying. Others recorded every second on their phones. "I don't stand here because I made all the right choices," she began. "I stand here because I made one powerful decision. I chose myself." Pause. "I want you to hear me. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you hate others. It means you love your peace more than someone's potential. It means you stop waiting for closure and start opening doors for yourself." The crowd clapped. Some cheered. Some people will say your standards are too high. Let them say it, because the right people will never ask you to lower them just to stay. More applause. She smiled. "Welcome to Her Ground," Ayanna concluded, "where your healing is not a trend, it's your birthright." The room rose to its feet. Isaac snapped a photo. It would later go viral with the caption, "This is what healing looks like in real time." Ayanna stepped off the stage and didn't cry. Not because she wasn't moved, but because she had finally become the woman she once needed, and the world had no choice but to catch up. That evening, Ayanna sat on the balcony of her Manhattan penthouse, the skyline glowing behind her. A soft jazz melody played through the speakers inside. The rooftop garden she'd planted after the breakup had grown into a thriving oasis, lavender, rosemary, even lemon trees lining the edge of the deck. She swirled the honey in her tea slowly, letting the steam hit her face. Across the city, the buzz of nightlife pulsed below, but here peace was personal. Her phone buzzed. It was an old contact. "Maya, publicist, heads up. Page 6 is running a photo of you and Isaac at the Her Ground launch. Headline, Ayanna Brooks finds love after leaving billionaire tech king. Want us to respond?" Ayanna looked at the screen. The photo showed her hand in Isaac's as they walked down the stage steps. Her smile was genuine. His gaze was steady. She texted back, "Ayanna, no comment. Let them talk." Maya responded with a heart emoji. Ayanna wasn't hiding her happiness, but she didn't owe it to headlines either. On the other side of town, Kellen Royce sat alone in his once iconic corner office. His name was still on the glass door, but inside, his empire was faltering. After Ayanna walked away, several investors began to question his leadership. First, it was a deal in Europe that collapsed. Then a lawsuit from a former CTO. Then Brielle, who had resurfaced on a yacht in Ibiza with another tech mogul, posted screenshots of old texts Kellen had sent her, flirtatious, borderline desperate, dated days before the wedding was supposed to happen. Public trust declined. His image took a hit. The press that once idolized him now questioned his judgment. And the team that used to hang on his every word began whispering behind doors. He stared at the photo on his desk. It was from the night he and Ayanna celebrated her business incorporation, the night her ground was born. She wore a white jumpsuit. Her smile was wide. He looked at her like she was his future. Now she was, just not with him. The article from her ground's launch trended the whole day. Kellen read every comment. She's the reason I walked out of my situation. Ayanna gave me the courage to say no. She didn't just leave. She built a kingdom. He closed the browser, heart heavy. He had been the man with every material thing, but he had gambled. Away the one person who would have helped him build more than wealth. She would have helped him build character. And now, she was beyond reach. The next day, Ayanna and Isaac visited her childhood neighborhood in Newark. Her ground had sponsored a local community center, and today was the official ribbon-to-cutting ceremony. Children raced through the painted hallways. There was a therapy room, an art studio, and even a podcasting suite for teens to tell their stories. Ayanna gave a short speech and spent the rest of the afternoon reading to a group of girls curled up on beanbags. Isaac stood at the back of the room, filming quietly. His pride for her wasn't loud, it was consistent. Later, as they walked out holding hands, a woman from the crowd called after her. "Ms. Brooks." Ayanna turned. "I just wanted to say, you're not saving lives, you're teaching us how to save ourselves." "Thank you." Ayanna smiled and nodded, her heart full. As they got into the car, Isaac turned to her. "Have you ever thought about what comes next?" "You mean after this tour?" "No, I mean next for you, for us." Ayanna looked out the window. "I don't know," she said. "I spent so long proving I could stand without him, I'm still learning how to lean into someone else again." Isaac didn't push. He took her hand and kissed it. "I'm not asking you to lean," he whispered. "I'm just asking to walk beside you." Ayanna blinked back a tear. Maybe this was what safety looked like. Not someone asking her to shrink to fit their past, but someone willing to expand with her future. Meanwhile, back in Kellen's world, another fire erupted. A board meeting turned sour when an anonymous whistleblower leaked internal documents about past investments. Not illegal, but unethical. Kellen's judgment was officially under public scrutiny. His PR team quit. His executive assistant left. The last text Brielle sent him read, "You're not the man I remember, and I don't want to be part of your crash." He was alone, truly. The silence that once felt like focus now felt like punishment. Kellen walked out of his office that night and didn't look back. No camera crews, no goodbyes. Just a man with his hands in his pockets and a weight on his shoulders. He walked the long streets of the city until he ended up in a bookstore. He didn't know why he went inside, but there at the front table was Ayanna's book. Her ground, Choosing Yourself Loudly. He opened it. The dedication read, "To every woman who stayed too long, gave too much," and finally said, "Enough. This is your permission slip." He read the first chapter, then the second. By the third, his throat tightened. She hadn't dragged him in the book. She didn't mention his name once. She spoke only of choices, boundaries, and rebuilding from pain. It would have been easier if she'd made him the villain. Instead, she made herself the hero and left him to face the truth. She didn't destroy his life. He handed her the match, and she chose not to burn the house down. She just walked away from it. And now, he stood in the ashes. That night, Ayanna sat on the floor of her living room, sorting through mail. One envelope stood out, no return address. Inside, a single piece of paper, his handwriting. "Ayanna, I wanted closure that night. What I needed was conviction. You gave me both. I don't expect anything, but I wanted you to know. I finally understand. Not what you did, what I lost. I hope you are loved the way you always deserved. K." Ayanna folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer she no longer opened often. She didn't need it for validation, but something about his words, honest, unpolished, confirmed what she already knew. She had made the right choice, not because he was a bad man, but because she had finally become a woman who could walk away from anything that didn't protect her peace. Isaac walked in with 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one and sat across from her, waiting. She didn't tell him about the letter, not because she was hiding anything, but because that chapter was closed, and this man in front of her was part of the story she wanted to write now. "I want to do something crazy," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening. I want to take a year off." Isaac blinked. "From everything? From public life, from proving, from explaining, from fighting?" He leaned back, a slow smile forming. "Where to?" "Somewhere with sand, and mangoes, and no Wi-Fi." He laughed. "I'll pack the sunscreen." Ayana sipped her tea, feeling the tension of the past few years slip further and further away. She had rebuilt her life. Now it was time to live it. The sun melted into the sea like a whispered goodbye. Ayana stood barefoot on a stretch of sand in Barbados, the breeze brushing her skin, soft and salty. Her sundress flowed around her knees, pale blue with white embroidered waves that mirrored the ocean behind her. For the first time in years, no cameras followed her, no interviews were scheduled, and no speeches were expected. It was peace, earned, not gifted. Isaac watched her from the veranda of their private bungalow, a journal in his lap and 2 cold drinks on the table. He had followed her lead in silence. No questions about timelines, no pressure to return to the spotlight, just presence, patience, partnership. Ayana breathed in deeply and closed her eyes. This wasn't a retreat. This was arrival. She hadn't just walked away from Kellen, from betrayal, or from humiliation. She had walked toward herself, toward wholeness, toward what she had nearly forgotten she deserved, ease. That morning, she had received an email from her agent. Subject: "You sure you're not ready for a return?" Ayana had smiled and hit archive. She was finally living a life that didn't need to be defended. Back in New York, the energy at Royce Tech had changed. Kellen no longer sat at the head of the boardroom table. That seat belonged to the new interim CEO, an older woman from Chicago who had once mentored Ayana during her non-profit days. Poetic in a way. Kellen had sold most of his shares, enough to keep the company afloat, but not enough to control it. He kept the penthouse, though he rarely stayed there. Instead, he traveled, quietly, not to parties or tech summits, but to small towns where no one knew his name. A bookstore in Vermont, a beach cabin in Maine, a rehab center in Arizona, where he volunteered to teach coding to teens. He didn't run from what he had been. He simply didn't want to live in that skin anymore. There was no Ayana in his life now, not directly, but she was everywhere, in the way he paused before speaking, in the way he listened more than he answered, in the way he finally understood that love had always been about choosing someone even when it's inconvenient. She had chosen herself, and in doing so, she taught him how to see everything he missed. Ayana's days now moved with grace. In Barbados, mornings began with barefoot walks and ended with grilled fish by the water. Her phone stayed on silent. Isaac cooked more than she did, and she finally learned how to nap without guilt. One evening, they sat beneath the stars, listening to waves clap the shore. Isaac turned to her. "What's been the biggest surprise for you?" Ayana thought for a moment, toes digging into the sand. "How okay I am," she said quietly. "I thought losing that relationship would break me. Instead, it built me. I didn't lose love. I found clarity." He nodded. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." She smiled. "No, I'm just finally living by my own definition of love." They toasted with coconut water under moonlight. No drama, no past weighing them down. Only now. Only this. Months passed. Ayana kept her word. She didn't return to her ground headquarters. Instead, she promoted one of her lead team members to CEO and let the brand grow without her face on it. The mission was always bigger than one woman anyway. One afternoon, while she was slicing papaya on the patio, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. She opened it slowly, expecting another press inquiry or delayed apology. Instead, it read, "I saw the photo of you and Isaac. He looks at you the way I should have. No need to respond. I just wanted you to know I'm proud of the woman you are. I hope he always gives you what I never could. K." Ayanna placed the letter back in the envelope. This time, there was no sting, only stillness. Kellen's words were no longer shackles. They were closure she didn't need, but welcomed anyway. She tossed the envelope in a drawer filled with old notebooks and opened her laptop. Not to write a comeback piece, but to start something new, a private blog. One without her name, her photo, or even a brand. Just stories. Stories of women who left, who stayed, who lost, who found their power, who loved themselves first. It was her way of giving without being seen. And maybe that was the point all along. That summer, Ayanna and Isaac traveled through the islands, St. Lucia, Grenada, and Martinique. They made no announcements, took no photos for followers. They danced barefoot at village festivals and ate plantains on the side of the road. When they returned to New York briefly for a wedding, the paparazzi caught a glimpse of them. Ayanna Brooks, founder of Her Ground, appears stronger and softer with new man. She didn't care for the headline, but she loved the accuracy of that last word, soft. She had been hard for so long. Hard to love, hard to reach, hard on herself. Now she allowed herself to rest, to be safe, to be seen. Not by a camera, but by someone who never asked her to prove her worth. Kellen Royce eventually gave a TED Talk, not about tech, not about money, about failure. It was raw, honest. He spoke of arrogance, of confusing desire with loyalty, of how he lost someone who had only ever asked for honesty. He didn't name Ayanna, but everyone knew. It went viral. Not because he played the victim, but because he told the truth. And sometimes, that's the start of redemption. Ayanna watched it on a rainy day while sipping mint tea. She didn't cry. She didn't clap. She just nodded, and then closed the tab. As her year away ended, Ayanna wrote one final blog post. To every woman who's ever had to watch the man she loved walk towards someone else, remember this. Letting go is not weakness. It is wisdom. You are not hard to love. You were just loving too soft in the wrong direction. Love yourself with the same patience you gave someone who didn't know how to stay. Choose peace. Loudly, Ayanna. She didn't post it on Her Ground. She posted it on the anonymous blog and watched as it was shared over 1 million times in under 48 hours. No photo, no name, just the words, because that's all she ever needed, her voice, and the peace to let it speak. The gala was black tie, elegant, and buzzing with whispers. Her Ground had just won the Global Wellness Impact Award. Ayanna wasn't there to accept it. Her team went on her behalf. She had no interest in trophies anymore, but across the room, a face familiar to many slipped in quietly, Kellen Royce. Not as a speaker, not even as a guest of honor. He had been invited because someone on the board respected how publicly he'd owned his fall. He declined the spotlight but showed up anyway, to watch from the shadows. He stood at the back near the champagne table, tux sharp, posture calm, expression unreadable. The presenter mentioned Ayanna's name. The applause roared. Her video acceptance message played, filmed on a beach in Antigua. Her hair in braids, a light dress, soft laughter under her words. I used to think power was being needed, Ayanna said, but real power is knowing you're enough, alone. In the silence that followed, even Kellen closed his eyes briefly. He stayed for the full ceremony. No outbursts, no grand gestures. He left unnoticed, but something in him shifted. He finally understood he hadn't lost a woman. He'd lost a mirror, one that reflected every part of himself, good and bad, and challenged him to grow. But he wasn't angry anymore. He was grateful, because her absence forced him to become someone he respected, and maybe that was her gift all along. 2 weeks later, Ayanna sat under a mango tree outside a small wellness retreat in Tobago. Isaac sat beside her, sketching garden plans for a new outreach center they wanted to build in the Caribbean, a place for young women to heal away from the noise. He glanced up at her. You ever think about going back? Headlines. Book tours. Lights. Ayana smiled without looking up from her cup of hibiscus tea. No. I like being loud in private. Isaac leaned back, satisfied. Then we'll stay loud together. Quietly. They laughed, and silence returned. Not awkward, not empty. Full. The internet buzzed for weeks after the award. People wanted to know who Ayana was dating. Speculation circled. Photos blurred. But no confirmations. She never posted Isaac, never discussed him in interviews. He wasn't her brand. He was her balance. He knew when to step forward and when to fall back, when to cheer and when to simply hold her hand. There were no power games, no ultimatums, just respect, laughter, and honest mornings. One night, Ayana received a message request on an old email she hadn't checked in years. From Quinn, Kellen's longtime legal advisor. Subject: he's leaving the city. The email was short. No drama, no chaos. Just wanted to let you know he's moving to Lisbon. Starting over. Says he wants fewer buildings and more oceans. Thought you'd like to know. Q. Ayana closed the tab. No tears. Just peace. Lisbon sounded beautiful. The final scene wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Ayana stood at the front of a small classroom of teenage girls at the new outreach center in Tobago. She wore jeans and a linen shirt. No makeup, no mic, just a whiteboard and her voice. Raise your hand, she said, if you've ever felt like your worth depended on someone else's love. Almost every hand went up. She nodded. I used to be that girl, the one who confused loyalty with permission, who thought forgiveness meant letting someone stay. But I learned something. She paused. They leaned in. You don't have to fight to be chosen. The right love won't put you in a position to compete. A girl in the back wiped her cheek. Another smiled. Ayana walked across the room and handed each girl a blank journal. Here's your story now, she said. Write it the way you want to remember it. The girls clapped. Some cried. And Ayana? She stood taller. Not as a survivor, but as a woman who never let heartbreak define her finish line. That night, Ayana journaled by candlelight. She didn't write about Kellen. She didn't write about Isaac. She wrote to herself, Dear me, I'm proud of you, not for walking away, but for not turning back, for loving softly and still choosing boundaries, for learning that silence isn't weakness, it's power. I hope you keep walking with your head high, even if no one claps. I hope you keep choosing you. A. She closed the book, blew out the candle, and walked barefoot into the night breeze. The moonlight kissed her cheeks. And somewhere far away, a man who once thought he owned her story now carried it as his deepest lesson. If Ayana's strength moved you, type choosing me I says enough in the comments. Tell us, have you ever walked away from someone who didn't value you until it was too late? Like this video. If you believe forgiveness doesn't mean going back, share this story with someone who needs the reminder. You are not hard to love. You were just loving the wrong one. Subscribe for more life stories that speak truth and give power back to where it belongs, with you.